Hello and welcome once again to Civil Engineering Today, brought to you by the Boston Society of Civil Engineers section. I'm Cristina Fragoso.
And I'm Brockman.
And today we have a really special guest because she happens to be our newly elected president for the Boston Society of Civil Engineers for the 2015-2016 year. Welcome. Her name is Ellen White.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And we are going to be talking a little bit about the history of BSCES, and then we're going to also ask her some personal questions because she has an unbelievable history in civil engineering, which we love to get to know more about. So tell us a little bit about BSCES, how you got involved, how long you've been involved.
Sure. BSCES, the Boston Society of Civil Engineers, is part of the American Society of Civil Engineers, which has about 147,000 members worldwide. And there are various sections that are all broken up geographically, and the Boston Society encompasses all of Massachusetts, and we have over 4,000 members here within the Commonwealth. And it really is it's an honor to be elected as president of this society. BSCES is actually the oldest engineering society within the United States.
You said it.
I know.
And everybody always wants to point that out.
Yeah. But we've also, not just the oldest, but we've also really been recognized by ASCE for our accomplishments. ASCE has awarded us the Best Section for Large Sections award for the past three of the past 4 years. Last year we won the Best Structural Institute, and the year before that the Best Geotechnical Institute. So we've really proven ourselves to be a leader among all the sections worldwide, and it's again a great pleasure to be president, and I'm really proud of all our accomplishments. We have 8 technical groups, structural and geotech being 2 of those 8. We have 10 student chapters across the state, and if you combine all of our committees, we have about 21 committees. And this is all a volunteer organization, which is absolutely astonishing that we can accomplish all this with volunteers. So
It is.
It's
As
huge.
someone who volunteers a lot on those groups, I know.
So we thank the volunteers, and we thank everyone, all the companies that support the volunteers, and all our sponsors who support us.
So I know the Boston Society of Civil Engineers, it sort of has two different, it has an internal direction and an external direction to it. So externally, for the world around us, what are some of the good things that the BSCES does?
Well, BSCES, we have a great outreach committee, which you are very familiar with. Reed has, of course, you've been involved with the K through 12 outreach for many years, and we do so many activities. It's actually quite overwhelming how many activities we do, Future City, Model Bridge, and everything else, just trying to teach what civil engineering is to the next generation, and getting them enthusiastic about the profession. We also do a great deal with government affairs and professional practice. We have a legislative fellow who is up at the State House, acts as support to the Joint Transportation Committee. And we have an active government affairs group that gets involved with Engineers and Land Surveyors Day, and also at the national level at the fly-in. We're involved with sustainability efforts, and we do a great deal. We have various events all year round just trying to teach other engineers technical advances in the profession, and various projects that we're all working on. And it's a great organization, and we do a great public service.
And speaking of public service, I know if you go to the website, they have an events list, and the public is welcome to come to many of our either technical lectures or just in general our community lectures that we give. So
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's bsces.org.
Yes, and the website is also being revamped, so watch for a new website to come out later on this fall, hopefully.
We're always telling people, civil engineers, we are always at town meetings, getting involved in our communities, and when we mention a project on the show, we always tell them, you can get involved, and what do you think about this? Come say what you think, and I think that would be a great website for them to go to.
Yeah.
And find out what's going on, how they can learn to get involved.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that people don't really get about civil engineers is that we do so much. I mean, the whole reason any of us got into this field was to really serve our communities in the first place. I mean, some of the events, like we've got other websites as well, like the celebrateinfrastructure.org, which is the home for that, once a year, that infrastructure celebration day. I don't know what we're going to do this year. We got that meeting coming up,
Yeah.
but and other the engineeryourfuture.org and other .orgs that all.
Yeah.
I know that's one of your big things this year is really getting our web presence bigger and getting the public to understand what a civil engineer.
Yeah, it's the public and even our membership. I mean, we do so very much as BSCES. All the committees and groups that I just mentioned. We have 50 or so technical lectures each year. We have all the outreach events that you and Olivia organize each year. But so much of our membership isn't even aware of this television show. We have a great engineering journal newsletter that's published monthly, and it's important to make sure that our membership is aware of everything that we do. And what we are doing right now with the website is making that information easily accessible, so that you don't have to drill down many different levels to get to a newsletter article, that it's readily available, and the website's going to be really exciting to see. And I think it's good at the way it is, but it's going to be even better a few months from now.
I think that it's going to be a good thing because I can remember when I was a student member, that's how I started. And even to this day, I'll go through the list like, whoa, what lectures are coming up? And I'm always finding something surprising that I want to go to.
I remember when you were a student member.
Yes, I remember that too.
And it was at Engineers Week the first time I met you, and I was dragging you into.
Yep, you dragged me in,
Yeah.
and I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. But now you mentioned that you do a lot with government affairs, the group, and legislation. Can you talk a little bit about that? Or
Sure.
I know that infrastructure is finally, it seems like since the beginning of this show when we started in 2006, we've talked about infrastructure, but now it actually seems like other people are talking about infrastructure, and I think that's thanks to your group efforts of people.
Well, it's our groups and others, and the Government Affairs and Professional Practice Group has been a great advocate for talking about our infrastructure needs within the Commonwealth. Tony Punton, the executive director of BSCES, and I actually gave a presentation to the Massachusetts Senate a few months ago about the importance of investing in our infrastructure. And in light of what happened with the MBTA this past winter, we all
fresh.
Yeah, we are reminded of the importance of our infrastructure. We don't take it for granted as much as we once had, and the investments that are needed are paramount. Right now, in terms of transportation infrastructure, Massachusetts invests about $600 million annually, and about $1 billion is needed. And the impact to an average citizen, just in vehicle operating costs, is about $500 annually. And then if you compound that with time lost due to congestion, and that ends up being about $2,000 annually. That doesn't even take into account lost revenue for businesses and other elements like that. So this is real money that affects every single one of us. And if you take a look at it just in terms of bridges, the number of structurally deficient bridges within the Commonwealth has decreased substantially, and that's in great part due to the Accelerated Bridge Program, which was introduced back in 2008 or so. That was an influx of about $3 billion that was made during the Deval-Patrick administration. At the time, the number of structurally deficient bridges was increasing at a steady rate. About 11% of the bridges in the state were structurally deficient at the time, and now we're at about 8%. So not only did it not increase and not stagnate, but it decreased significantly. The problem with the Accelerated Bridge Program is that funding ends next year. So we again want to make sure that we're not at the same sort of situation.
It's been wonderful watching those bridges get
Yeah.
replaced. I mean, especially since I'm staring at that list of bad bridges all the time. Fits
I
me
live in
staring
a
at the
city
bridges all
of
the
bridges
time.
and canals too, and I'm like, please don't ever let one of these close
Yeah.
because you know you're going to suffer. But in that effort, I know you have an economic study going on, and we definitely would love to have you back on the show
Yeah.
at some point when that's prepared to look more in depth at it.
Yeah, the Government Affairs Committee is preparing that as we speak, so we'd be delighted to.
And now we're going to kind of get a little bit more personal with you. I don't know if you knew about the Twitter trend last week about the I Look Like an Engineer, where an attractive engineer was picked, to be on the cover of their company materials. and no one thought she was a real engineer, and I thought that was horrible. And I've never really experienced that
Yeah.
kind. But as a woman in engineering,
Yeah.
what do you think of the roles of gender, or have you seen it improve over the years?
Oh yeah, there's been significant change. I've been in the profession now for nearly 25 years, 23 years or so. And when I started, when I was in school, I was the only woman in my class. And my first job, I was the only woman in my entire bridge design group of engineers and drafters. And that was normal. I felt comfortable with that. That was what was expected. And then when I progressed in my career and eventually went to project meetings, I was still the only woman engineer, and there were slowly few more women present. And then I remember the first time I was in a project meeting, and there was with a client, and there was another woman in the room, and that felt awkward, to be honest with you, because all of a sudden I wasn't the only woman, and in a good way it felt awkward, obviously, but I just remember that feeling. I was just so accustomed to being in that sort of scenario, and it's great to see women entering the profession, and anyone, I mean, minorities or anyone. This is a wonderful profession to pursue, and it should be considered by all. And I'm glad that women and others are getting more interested in engineering.
I'm definitely going to agree with that.
And that's been a big focus even of BSCES is, a lot of our public awareness and outreach efforts have all been geared towards.
Yep, I've actually gone and given a speech at a Girls Inc. More than enough.
Which is crazy that I've often been like the representative going to the all-women events all the time. But but Science Club for Girls, we're always trying to work with them all the time, and Girls Inc. and all of our activities. It's great seeing the energy and enthusiasm coming out. There seems to be a key age in middle school where there's almost like a turn-off switch, and if you can keep the girls' interest across the turn-off switch, at least we're really hoping, that's our plan, is that they'll stay interested and they'll be past that, that engineering isn't cool kind of
I think that's
idea.
changing.
I think so too.
I think it's changing. The class behind, I was one of two in my class. There was only two of us, but the class behind me was about 50%.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that was a total change. But now I want to talk a little bit about your family history, because you didn't just get into civil engineering. You already, maybe this is why it was easier for you to get into civil engineering. You have a history behind you. Can you tell us a little bit about that and your dad?
Yeah, there are a number of engineers in my family. Particularly, both of my parents were engineers, so I'm a result of inbreeding, I guess. My father was a civil engineer. He was a professor and head of the civil engineering department at UMass Amherst for 45 plus years or so. And he just enjoyed teaching and enjoyed his research. He was the first person to receive a PhD in the field of civil engineering from Caltech. Wow. His research dealt primarily with responsive buildings to earthquakes and how to design buildings and structures for bomb blasts and plastic wave propagation in materials. So, which was important before the Second World War, but even more important during the Second World War. And among his activities, he compiled all the research the Germans had done in the field of physics during the Second World War. So he is certainly instrumental in getting me involved with civil engineering. And my mother was also a civil engineer. She worked at the Academy of Science in Prague and in Czechoslovakia, and that's where they met. And her work was primarily more chemical engineering based and air quality studies in factories, and so.
Do you see a lot of other engineers where their parents are also engineers?
I think it's quite common, actually. I don't know many people whose mothers were engineers, but I know quite a few fathers who've had their children follow in their footsteps. So yeah, I have seen quite a bit of that.
Well,
I think that's an interesting question, because actually a lot of colleagues that I have now have kids going into college, and they're talking about their majors in engineering. It might not necessarily be civil, but
Yeah.
they talk about engineering as the major they want to get into.
Yeah.
So,
Well, at the lunch I was at today, it was, let's see, how many, my wife is a civil engineer, so that's a double. Christy and Dennis Baker, that was two. Binu and her husband, both, so Matt Kukuro and his wife. We had at least, so we're talking like half the table was civil engineering couples. Like, so maybe that next generation, but what we don't know is the next generation.
Yeah.
I'd imagine my kids, with all they see and all the bridge tours they've taken them on and everything, they must be like, oh my God, I'm running away from this.
no, because she grew up with two civil, and she, you know that it was going to be fun, and it sounds like he was very. I mean, I was looking through his resume, and I'm like, oh, like look at these cool projects. I wish I worked on.
Yeah, yeah.
But, I mean, it seems like if you know about it, you know how
Your
fun
dad
it
is like the most known civil engineer ever too, because he always UMass ties everybody.
Yeah, yeah. There's a UMass graduate out there that's near impossible to have graduated without having had him, either mechanical or civil. And he loved teaching, and he loved his research, and even as a child, like my earliest memories is him like giving me a bath and dropping some water and watching it propagate and bouncing off the walls, and him explaining that it's really not just doing that, it's really a form of energy, and explaining tsunamis.
I think that's great.
And this is like a 3-year-old at the time, and and then explaining how bombs blast, and explaining missile barrier interaction, and those were discussions that we had. I mean, rather one-way discussions, but
No, I thought that.
But by the time you were 6.
yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Then I was lecturing. Yeah.
No, I think that's great. Actually, I think that's a great way to learn.
Yeah.
It's just organic for you to
Yeah.
take that in at a young age. But then now you got involved in the community side too. Now they were both active in the community, or
Yeah, well, he was. Not so much on the engineering side, but he did a lot of volunteer work outside of engineering. But he loved teaching. I mean, that was more the, when
That's
later
outreach.
on in his life.
That's outreach on its own. Right
Yeah,
there.
and he just enjoyed, it kept him going and active. And even when he was in his 80s, he was still teaching 4 courses each semester, and it was what he loved doing. I think that's an important lesson to, no matter what your profession is to make sure that you enjoy the field that you're in. And it's rare that you could find something that you enjoy so much. And
Right, that you don't even want to retire.
You don't
just
want to
want to
retire.
keep on doing it.
and I was looking at some of the studies he did in World War II around bomb blasts, and is that still relevant today? I mean, of course. I mean, I think it's cool. Not that I want a war to happen, so I get to study this, but I think it's probably still relevant in some areas. Like the Army Corps probably still uses it.
yeah, I mean, I think some of the plastic wave propagation theory that he had done is still certainly relevant. And the early research I did on calculating the damping effects, from accelerograms, I think that's
It's a hard word.
Yeah, that's. But the research he had done in the 1930s and 40s is quite a bit of it's still relevant.
Wow. Not again. Not that I want any war.
Well, we can think of it in different ways.
I might
We-
just read the
Instead of
paper.
a bomb blast, let's
Right.
call it like a paint company.
No. But
Oh, how
Have
about
an
a water
accident.
main explosion?
or another way of looking at it is it's to build structures to resist impacts. I mean, it could be from tornadoes and from debris hitting a building, or building embassies that can resist bomb blasts, or
There are several
nuclear-
buildings in Boston, I believe, that are under that code.
Yeah.
I think the Federal Reserve is, no? Wasn't that designed?
I don't know, but
I would assume.
I'm sure.
I believe so.
We go to the horizontal world most of
Yeah.
the time with our projects. Our buildings don't go upward.
Yeah.
Oh, for you, yeah. Especially for him. Yeah, and me too. I'm a geotech, so I'm mostly dirt.
Yeah.
Well, we're running out of time. I know you probably have some announcements, so we want to thank you, Ellen, so much for coming
Oh,
on
my
our
pleasure.
show.
Thank you.
And we definitely would love to have you back to talk about the economic study once it's available. And even, next year is an election year, so we'd love anything that you feel, the public should be aware of as far as the infrastructure needs to come on the show and talk about it.
My pleasure.
We
Thank
have
you so
no
much.
problem doing it.
So as for announcements, everybody be looking mostly for www.bsces.org. very soon that'll be a new website and very, very exciting, all kinds of good things happening there. Also, engineeryourfuture.org, the Future City competition. The books are ready, and I better mail them out before school starts. So I've got only a couple more weeks to pull that together. Yes, school is just around the corner. Teams all over New England, we are in charge of this competition for grades 6 through 8 for all of New England. Anybody that is interested, basically you come up with your ultimate dream city of the future. All you need is 3 kids, and you need a teacher to be overseeing you, and you create your dream city of the future. Then you gotta build the model and give a 7-minute presentation on it and answer some questions. And as usual, we
The
eat
winner
pizza.
gets to go to DC, meet
The winner gets to go to
president.
DC, and the winner of that gets to go to space camp.
Yes, I know. I would have loved
And
that.
a whole bunch of unannounced, not necessarily the winner, but someone gets to meet the president from the thing at the U.S. Science Fair also. But you never know who gets picked.
Is the West End Festival happening this weekend as well?
Oh my God, that's a big thing. How could I not say that? Right, the West
I'm
End
here to
Festival
poke you.
is this Saturday, and do you know what time it starts? I better know what time it starts before Saturday.
No, we can put it on the website though.
On the website. So I'll put it up on, engineeryourfuture.org. We'll get it up there, and probably, is it already up at BSCES?
It's not yet, but you can put
we'll
up there if you.
Put it up there too. And it's going to be great. This is the West End of Boston. Just know if you lived here, you'd be home right now. In behind that, in the big area in behind Whole Foods and that whole apartment complex, that whole area is filled with all kinds of activities and food samples and things like that. This is one of the best
like
free
the
things. I
activities.
like the food samples and the activities.
Yeah.
So that's the announcements for this. The Model Bridge Contest, we're in the process of getting those specs pulled together. That's going to be starting up in October, so everybody be looking for that. That's grades 5 through 12.
So you can see how important that website is.
Yes.
And go to the website. We'll make sure that every event we have is going to be listed on there. We'd like to thank you for joining us, and thank you, Ellen, again.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Ellen.
you, Pete. And we'll see you again.